Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into what is arguably the quietest, yet somehow the loudest, and absolutely the most expensive infrastructure project of the 21st century. It's a massive phenomenon that's literally reshaping our landscapes, our economies, and especially our power grids.
So let's just start with a super simple question. Think about your day so far. Every single time you send an email, stream a movie, or pull up a map on your phone to get directions, you are interacting with a physical space somewhere. But do you actually know where that is? We always talk about things being in the cloud, which makes it sound so light, airy, and entirely invisible. But the reality? Well, it's incredibly grounded.
Section 1. The Physical Cloud.
All right, let's strip away that whole ethereal illusion of the internet for a second and bring the digital world down into concrete reality. The cloud definitely isn't floating up there in the sky. It's actually a massive, completely windowless warehouse. Think of these places as fortresses of silicon. They are packed tightly with thousands of servers, insanely complex cooling systems, and massive backup batteries. They essentially act as the literal digital power plants of modern civilization. Because honestly, without these physical buildings, our entire digital world just stops.
Just think about how this has exploded over time. Back in the early 1990s, during the early internet days, you just had these isolated individual facilities. But as we move toward 2020, they start to multiply and interlock rapidly. That's when the modern construction boom really kicked off. And then, bam, right around 2023, generative AI arrives and pushes this growth into absolute hyperdrive. The sheer volume of servers required right now is just off the charts, leading us straight into this massive, unprecedented peak of infrastructure spending hitting in 2026.
Section 2. The 2026 AI Gold Rush.
By 2026, the rise of advanced artificial intelligence has taken this construction boom and blasted it into a completely new stratosphere. I mean, the sheer scale of processor hunger we're talking about here is staggering. AI just requires exponentially more computing power than, say, a standard internet search. We're talking about chips like the NVIDIA H100, which generate so much immense heat they actually require highly specialized facilities just to keep them from failing. And to feed this hunger, tech giants like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta, they're pouring literally hundreds of billions of dollars into capital expenditures. They're rushing to build these centers because right now Wall Street views a company's data center capacity as the ultimate indicator of its future value.
Section 3. The Hidden Toll. But, as you might guess, all this rapid progress casts a pretty long shadow. As these huge structures interlock into a monolithic grid, we really have to confront the hidden toll of these resource vampires. Because to keep those cutting-edge servers from literally melting down, these facilities have to drain millions of gallons of water every single day. And in drought-prone areas, that creates a really shocking dynamic. These vast data centers are now forced into direct competition with local farmers and residents for the local water table. We're essentially trading a fundamental life resource just to cool down machines.
And then there's the power issue. To put this into perspective, just one single large data center can consume as much electricity as 80,000 to 100,000 homes. That is a wild amount of energy. The power demand as we approach 2026 is so severe and hit us so suddenly that some states are actually delaying the retirement of highly polluting coal plants. Yeah, you heard that right. They are quite literally burning coal again just to keep the cloud online and running at the speeds that AI requires.
Section 4. Taxpayer burdens and utilities.
Now, you might be wondering who's footing the bill for all this. Well, the staggering financial weight of this massive power grid expansion isn't just falling on the tech giants building the algorithms. A lot of it is falling directly onto you. It's this bizarre contrast of what we call the subsidy trap versus the utility spike. See, states desperately want these big tech companies in their backyards, so they offer them hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks to lure them in. But because these huge centers require massive upgrades to the power grid, like brand new substations and high voltage lines, utility companies often pass those multi-million-dollar infrastructure costs right on to the average taxpayer. In places known as data center alleys, like Northern Virginia, local residents are suddenly seeing double-digit utility bill hikes, literally just to pay for the infrastructure that supports these private warehouses.
Section 5. Ghost Warehouses.
So, what does the local community actually get in return for all this? Well, while citizens end up paying for the infrastructure, those promised local economic benefits, they're mostly an illusion. Despite boasting a massive footprint of over 1 million square feet, a fully completed data center might only employ something like 30 to 50 permanent workers. Sure, there's a quick temporary spike in jobs when the building's actually being constructed, but once those servers are plugged in and humming, it basically becomes a ghost town. It is definitely not the local job engine that politicians often claim it's going to be.
And far from being bustling community hubs, these giant, windowless buildings act more like global black boxes. They provide the near-infinite storage capacity that's required for things like mass government surveillance and the private data harvesting that has really come to define our modern era. They're just sitting there, silently storing the metadata of entire populations, locked securely behind concrete walls right in your own community.
Section 6. The Great 2026 Paradox.
All right, so this brings us to the culmination of all these different factors. This is the active tension defining our current moment, a really bitter political battleground that pits the limitless promises of tomorrow against the very finite resources of today. On one hand, federal and state governments argue that these fortresses are absolutely vital for national security and for maintaining a competitive edge in the global AI race against rivals like China. But down on the ground, citizen resistance is fierce. Local groups are out there filing lawsuits over the relentless noise pollution from these massive cooling fans, the visual blight of endless power lines, and the hoarding of local resources by companies that often pay barely anything in local taxes.
When we objectively map out this trade-off, a really stark contrast emerges between the promises and the reality. Governments and tech companies promise an economy that leads the AI revolution, but the reality for citizens is increased residential utility rates. We're promised high-efficiency green tech, yet the reality on the ground is incredibly heavy water and land consumption. Authorities tout the high-tech prestige of robust job creation, but local communities experience the reality of very, very few permanent local employees. And finally, that promise of a modernized power grid, it often comes packaged with the frustrating reality of visual blight and constant noise pollution.
All of this leaves us to ponder what really is the ultimate 2026 paradox. To quote the absolute core of the issue, we want an AI that can solve climate change and cure cancer, but to build it, we are currently draining local reservoirs and burning more coal than we have in a decade.
So it all comes down to this. Is the limitless promise of the invisible cloud truly worth the very real physical cost to our ground? It's an incredibly complex reality that we all have to navigate as we build the future, trying to balance our massive technological ambitions with our very real environmental boundaries. We hope this explainer has helped bring those invisible costs out of the cloud and into clear view.